You know, the greatest strategic failure in SEO is what's called the volume trap. It's this belief that ranking for high-traffic keywords is the same as building a profitable business, but it ignores a really simple fact about how our brains work. The money is found in the intent, not the volume. For years, we've all been told that success is just about getting more traffic, more clicks, more eyeballs. But you know what? That whole premise is just fundamentally flawed. So today, we're going to move beyond the simple game of keywords and into the much more sophisticated world of information architecture. This is about building a system, a real machine, that doesn't just rank. It's designed to completely dominate its category.
So here's how we're going to break it all down. First up, we'll dive into the great volume trap. Because look, you can't solve a problem until you really know what it is. Then we'll look at the failure of flat content. This is the big mistake most companies are making right now. After that, we'll finally unveil the solution, the SEO Intent Tree. This is the blueprint. We'll dig into the psychology that makes it work so well. I'll give you a concrete 3-step plan to build your own. And finally, we'll change how you think about success, shifting your focus from just getting clicks to actually getting customers.
All right, let's start with that first big idea, the great volume trap. I mean, this is a problem that gets even the most experienced marketing teams. It's this super alluring idea that the biggest keywords, the ones with the highest search numbers, are the ultimate prize. And it feels right, doesn't it? It looks fantastic on a report. But it's an illusion, and it's costing you way more than just time and money. It's draining your resources, and honestly, it's killing your conversions.
This right here, this gets to the absolute heart of the paradox. We've all been trained to chase volume, to really fight for those huge, broad search terms. But what this idea argues is that this completely ignores a basic truth about how people behave online. See, the search query isn't just a bunch of words, it's a direct signal of what someone wants. And the real business value, the real money, is not in the number of people searching, but in the psychological intent behind that search. And this illustrates the difference perfectly. I mean, look at this. On the left, someone searches for marketing. What do they want? Who knows? They could be a student, just curious, or, just browsing. They're a tourist. Now look at the right. The person searching for SaaS marketing automation for small agencies. Well, they are telling you exactly who they are, what their business is, and the specific problem they need to solve. They aren't browsing, they are a buyer, and they are on a mission. The search volume is way lower for sure, but the commercial intent, it's exponentially higher.
So chasing volume is the wrong strategy, but it's usually just a symptom of a much deeper problem. It's a crisis that comes from a totally broken approach to creating content. It's an approach that has most brands running in place on what you could call the content treadmill. Working harder and harder for less and less, publishing nonstop without building any real, lasting authority.
You see, most content strategies are flat. You publish an article, then another one, and another one, but there's no real deliberate connection between them. This creates something called semantic fragmentation. All that means is that search engines can't see how your content fits together. So to an algorithm, your site doesn't look like an authoritative library on a subject. It just looks like a random pile of disconnected ideas. And because of that, you never build real topic authority. And this is the kicker. Any ranking power you get for one article doesn't leak over to the pages that actually make you money. And this is basically what your site looks like to Google with a flat model. It's just a sea of lonely islands. Yeah, each article might be a great little island on its own, but together they don't form a continent of authority. A search engine's job is to find the definitive source, the continent, not just some random island. Without that structure, that hierarchy, there's just no clear signal that you're the expert. This is the content treadmill right here, just adding more boxes, hoping one gets lucky, instead of building a single powerful system.
Okay, so if flat content is the disease, then the SEO intent tree is the cure. And this isn't just another tactic. It's a completely different philosophy, a different way of thinking. It's about getting off the content treadmill and starting to think like an architect, not just a writer. This is the blueprint for building a real system that can dominate your topic. The whole thing starts at the foundation with what we call the informational roots. This is your top of funnel stuff. Think about those big educational articles that answer the basic why and how questions. Why is marketing automation important? Or how does email sequencing actually work? The goal here is not to sell anything, it's to educate. This content grabs people at the very beginning of their journey, builds your authority on the topic, and acts like a root system, gathering all the energy, the traffic, to fuel the entire tree.
Okay, so once a user is on your site reading your awesome root content, where do they go next? That's where the commercial branches come in. These are your middle funnel articles, aimed at people who are past the learning stage and are now actively looking at solutions. Things like best marketing automation platforms or a review of a specific product, or a side-by-side comparison. By linking your informational routes up to these commercial branches, you create this seamless, totally logical path. You guide them from learning to evaluating without them ever having to hit the back button to Google. And here is where it all comes together. Everything, all the authority from those routes, all the guided traffic from the branches, it's all designed to support one thing, the transactional trunk. These are your money pages, your product pages, your service pages, your pricing pages. In a flat model, these pages really struggle to rank on their own. But in the intent tree model, they're supported by this huge system of relevant content. Google sees the structure and gets it. It understands that your product page isn't just a sales page, it's the ultimate answer, the trunk of this deeply authoritative tree. And here it is, the whole picture. Just compare this to those disconnected boxes we saw earlier. This is a system. It's a hierarchy. Authority flows upward, from the broad educational routes through the evaluative branches, and it concentrates all of its power on that transactional trunk. When you build this way, the whole game changes. You stop fighting over single keywords. You start owning entire categories. You become the definitive answer. This is how you build predictable growth. So we've covered the what. Now let's talk about the why. Because to really master this, you have to understand why it is so incredibly effective. And the answer isn't just about algorithms. It's about deep-seated principles of human psychology. This system works because it aligns up perfectly with how people naturally look for information and make decisions. The first principle is something called Information Foraging Theory. It's a pretty powerful idea. It basically says that when we're searching online, we act like animals hunting for food. We're constantly, subconsciously, sniffing around for clues, for an information scent that tells us we're on the right path to finding our answer. If that scent is strong, we keep going deeper. But if it gets weak, like if a link takes us somewhere irrelevant, we're gone. We abandon the trail and start over somewhere else. The intent tree is designed specifically to create the perfect information scent. So a user starts with a broad search. The scent is pretty faint. They land on one of your informational root articles. You answer their first question really well, so the scent gets stronger. Then, inside that article, they see a link to one of your branch pieces, maybe a comparison guide. Now the scent is perfect. See, you're not just answering their questions, you're anticipating their next one. By the time they see a link to your trunk, your actual product page, the trust is already there. You've guided them every single step of the way, and your solution feels less like a sale and more like an inevitable discovery. The second psychological key is the authority heuristic. This is a mental shortcut our brains use to make decisions faster. When we find a single website that seems to cover a topic from every possible angle, from the basic what is questions all the way to complex product comparisons, our brain just subconsciously grants that source expert status. We stop questioning and we start trusting. The sheer comprehensiveness of the intent tree triggers this shortcut, making people dramatically more likely to trust your final recommendation, which is, of course, your product. All right, we've covered the what and the why. Now, let's get practical and turn all this theory into action. This isn't just a cool concept. It's a framework you can actually use. Let's talk about how you could start building your very own ranking machine, starting today. Here's your blueprint. It's just 3 steps. Step 1, execute the intent audit. This is where you map out what you've already got. Go through all of your keywords and all your content and sort everything by user intent. Is this a root, a branch, or a trunk? Step 2, designate your pillar trunks. This requires focus. You can't be everything to everyone. So identify the 3 to 5 core topics that you absolutely have to be known for. These become your transactional trunks. And finally, step 3, implement the upward link mandate. This is the engineering that makes it all work. Every single root and every single branch must link upward, channeling its power towards its designated pillar trunk. Now, as you build this system, you're going to need a new way to measure success. You have to forget the old metrics. Traffic, keyword rankings, bounce rate, they're all secondary. They're just inputs. There's really only one output, one number that you should be completely obsessed with. And this is it. Total organic revenue per cluster. This is the non-negotiable metric. You're not measuring how well one article does anymore. You're measuring the actual business impact of an entire intent tree. When this number goes up, you know the system is working. You know your architecture is successfully turning those informational tourists into high-value buyers. This metric cuts right through all the noise and ties your content directly to the bottom line. So bringing this all together, this framework really is a fundamental shift in how you think. It's about moving beyond just the day-to-day tactics and really grasping the core insight that powers sustainable, long-term organic growth.
And that insight is this: ranking is a result of structure, not just content. I mean, you can write the best article in the world, but if it's just an isolated island, its potential is always going to be limited. Real authority, the kind that lets you dominate search results for whole categories, comes from the logical, hierarchical connection between your pieces. It comes from deliberate architecture.
And that means your role has to change. You have to stop thinking of yourself as just a content creator, churning out articles on that treadmill. With this model, you become something much more powerful. You become an authority architect, someone who deliberately designs and builds systems of knowledge that both users and algorithms can't help but reward with their trust and their attention.
And that really brings us to the core philosophy behind this whole system. The best marketing doesn't push people through a funnel. It pulls them toward value. The intent tree works because when someone finds your ecosystem, at every single step of their journey, they feel like they've found exactly what they were searching for all along. And that is the secret to building a true ranking machine.